Hi guys, you are welcome in Literature Simply. Simple way to learn literature and language. Friends, in this video we are going to discuss about a very prominent neoclassical literary critic, Dr. Samuel Johnson. Especially Dr. Samuel Johnson's preface to the plays of William Shakespeare, which has paved new ways in the literary criticism. And as we know that Dr. Samuel Johnson is one of the greatest critics of Shakespeare, and he has given new insight into the criticism of Shakespeare, and he has put before us the great Shakespeare, the genius Shakespeare, and this preface has become a norm and a very outstanding piece of literary criticism in the field of English literature, because through this literary criticism or through this preface we can know about different types of threads of Shakespearean critique, and we also know about how Shakespeare became so great a poet in the English literature. So, greatness of Shakespeare lies in this Dr. Johnson's preface to the plays of William Shakespeare. Friends, so let's start with some background of Dr. Samuel Johnson. Dr. Samuel Johnson is become so eminent critic, so eminent neoclassical critic because of his a few works, and here we have his most famous works on which his fame as a literary critic rested. So here we have very first work he composed. We know Dr. Johnson for his Dictionary of English Language. So we have his Dictionary of English Language, which is most famous as Johnson's Dictionary, and it is one of the first dictionaries in English language. The second, his prominent works appeared in Rambler. Rambler is a periodical he started and edited from 1750 to 1752, and in these 2 years he composed so many literary articles in that Rambler, a periodical, and he became famous as an editor and critic of various poets. The third piece of his literary work is a preface to the plays of William Shakespeare, which we are going to discuss in this video. And in this preface, he talks about the merits and demerits of Shakespeare. This preface is published in 1765, and the last work on which his fame is rested is his very fine piece of literary criticism and biographies of English poets, which is called as the lives of the poets, or the larger title we have lives of the eminent English poets, which include 52 English poets, which is published in 1779. So this work also is a very famous work of literature in the series of criticism. So friend, these four works or these four pieces are significant in the career of Dr. Johnson as a critic, and here our main discussion point is preface to the plays of William Shakespeare. Now this preface is very significant in English literature because after this preface we find that the Shakespearean criticism has taken a turn, and a lot of later scholars and critics are dependent on these opinions of Dr. Johnson. So let's discuss this preface in detail. Very first friend, let's understand the plan of this preface. Actually, Dr. Johnson wanted to write this preface in a year or two, but he took full 9 years to compose this preface, and he studied every facet of Shakespeare, his age, the situations prevailed in that particular period, the characters of Shakespeare, the whole works of Shakespeare, different types of comparisons he did. He studied and analyzed a lot of data on Shakespeare, and then after 9 years he composed this fine piece of literary criticism, that is preface to Shakespeare, and it includes as per the initial edition or the first edition of this preface 72 pages, and we have here 162 paragraphs or the passages in this preface included. And then he generally divided, or different types of critics or scholars divide this piece into two broad divisions, that is Shakespeare as a timeless or universal figure and Shakespeare as a dramatist. But friends, for our analysis or understanding purpose, we have divided this fine piece of writing or the preface to Shakespeare in 5 parts, and in this video we are going to discuss about the first parts of this preface, because this is a longer one preface, and Johnson very deeply or extensively talks about Shakespeare, his merits and demerits. Actually, it is not possible to cover all the preface in single video, so I think there might be two or more than two videos on this preface. So in this video particularly, we are talking about Shakespeare as a timeless and universal figure. So friends, let's start with the very first part. Now the very question here prevails that why Shakespeare has become so great a genius, or what are the qualities or what are the things that Shakespearean literature has overall, if you think about. And here we have the remarks of Dr. Johnson. What did Dr. Johnson says about Shakespeare, and why did he study Shakespeare so intensively or extensively in this way? So let's understand the first remark. Shakespeare is above all writers, at least above all modern writers, the poet of nature, the poet that holds up to the readers a faithful mirror of manners and of life. His characters are not modified by the customs or particular places, unpracticed by the rest of the world. They are the genuine progeny of common humanity, such as the world will always supply and observation will always find. Friends, this is the holistic opinion of Dr. Johnson on the study of Shakespeare, that he says Shakespeare is above all writers, because Shakespearean characters are real life characters. First he talks about his characters, and he talks about how Shakespeare has included the very emotions and natures and real life situation into those characters, and then the characters become the universal characters, the timeless characters. If you look at the first 1 to 4 paragraphs, we find that he talks about, or directly he did not begin Shakespearean criticism. First he talks about the antiquity, the place of ancientness in a piece of literature, or how a piece of literature becomes very famous. According to Dr. Johnson, antiquity has a very great role to play in the greatness of the work or the writer. And he says that Shakespeare also becomes a very famous writer only after his death. So antiquity is important. But again, he discards this point and says that only antiquity is not significant in the leading of the greatness of a writer or an author or a poet, but other factors also are important. For example, he talks about the Shakespearean characters, universal types of characters in which we find that all the human emotions or all the human instincts are present, and so these characters become famous. So again, Dr. Johnson says about the role of criticism and the role of antiquity in deciding the greatness of a author. So here we have his own words. The great contention of criticism is to find the faults of the moderns and the beauties of the ancients. While an author is yet living, we estimate his powers by his worst performance, and when he is dead, we rate them by his best. So here he makes clear that the antiquity has the role to play in the greatness of any poet, but it is not the only factor which decides the greatness. So there are so many factors he talks about. The Shakespearean literature or the Shakespearean tragedies or comedies stand for longer time, and they please for a longer time, and this is also a very great quality of Shakespearean literature, that it pleases for all and pleases for longer time. So these are the words he describes regarding Shakespeare. Again, he says that we find a flood of characters in the Shakespearean plays or in the Shakespearean works, and this flood of characters reflects, or they just shows us the real people from the society, and they are really very, we can say that, very deeply rooted characters in the society. So they show us the basic instinct, they show us the emotions, they show us the feelings, they also makes us laugh, they also makes us mourn on some situation. Now this is the power of Shakespeare, and this power stirs us. Again, he says that actually Shakespeare did not need any special characters or any special heroes to borrow from somewhere or from some literature, but he chooses them from a real human life, and Here again we have his own words. Shakespeare has no heroes. His scenes are occupied only by men who act and speak as a reader thinks that he should himself have spoken or acted on the same occasion. Even where the agency is supernatural, the dialogue is leveled with life. If we think about Shakespearean characters, we feel that they are real characters, and these characters come from us, and when we see them on the stage, we find that how they becomes real in delineating our own feelings, our own emotions. And so that he says that Shakespeare did not need any special heroes but the common characters, and we find that there are different types of characters in the Shakespearean plays. So there are kings, there are prince, there are princess, there are queens, then we find there are buffoons, there are fools, there are knights. So different types of characters he included in his plays, and they become very live performance on the stage. So this is the greatness of Shakespeare, or the great genius of Shakespeare. Friends, again, next point here we have, that is Shakespeare has combined laughter and sorrow at one place. So in the one drama or in the same drama. Now many critics object to this, that he has combined laughter and sorrow in the same place or in the same drama. So this is wrong as per the Greek tradition or the classical tradition of composition. But here Johnson supports this point, that no life is devoid of only sorrow or only merry or only happiness. So we do not find only happiness in the life or only sorrow. So life is combination of both happiness and sorrow. And based on this general principle, Johnson says that Shakespeare has combined all these things, the sorrow and the happiness, and he has generated a new kind of form in literature, that is tragic comedy. So there are some elements of tragedy and some elements of comedy. It is the amalgamation or mixture of both, as human life is the mixture of both. So this is the supportive point made by Dr. Johnson. According to classical critics, they say that it is not possible to instruct or please with these both forms, tragic comedy. So there should not be the amalgamation or the mixture of tragic and comic elements in one play. So they should be separate to please, because pleasing or the giving instruction or teaching morality is the prime object of literature. As per classical critics, we can say that. But here Johnson says that it is not needed, because Shakespeare has combined these elements so finely that we cannot very consciously get. We are just involved into that particular play. So here again we have his own remarks. By showing how great machinations and slender designs may promote or obviate one another, and the high and the low cooperate in the general system by unavoidable concatenation. So it is easy to combine low and high elements, because life is built around these high and low elements. There are ups and downs in human lives, and the same has been reflected by Shakespeare in his play. So Shakespeare becomes great in this way. Again, there is a point that Shakespearean plays are categorized as comedies, tragedies and histories, but Dr. Johnson says that there is no any fixed demarcation or a very fixed kind of line to divide his plays or categorize his plays. His plays are generally the intermixture of all elements. We cannot say that these plays belong to a particular or special kind of category like history or tragedy or comedy. There may be elements of tragedy in historical plays, there may be some elements in comic plays, or there may be some elements of comedy in tragedy. So these are the amalgamated form which Shakespeare has created, and here we have Dr. Johnson's words which define very clearly that Shakespearean works or Shakespearean plays cannot be categorized very strictly. Through all these denominations of the drama, Shakespeare's mode of composition is the same, an interchange of seriousness and merriment by which the mind is softened at one time and exhilarated at another. He never fails to attain his purpose, as he commands us. We laugh or mourn or sit silent with quiet expectation, in tranquility, without indifference. So it is clear from this statement that what Shakespeare wanted from audience, he did exactly the same. So we laugh when we see his comedies, we mourn when we see his tragedies, and we feel anxious when we see his history. So this is the power of stirring of these plays by William Shakespeare. So this genius has a great power to stir the readers or to stir the audience. Now friends, this is the very first point. In this point we talked about the timelessness and the universality of Shakespeare, how Shakespeare is a great or genius point. Friends, I am very sure that you might have understood all these things which we have talked in this video. Please like this video, share this video among your friends, and subscribe to Literature Simply, and also do not forget to press the bell notification icon for updates.